Next up for the Auburn Tigers is the trip to UGA to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. Can the Tigers keep it going in SEC play?
The Auburn Express. You are now listening to the War Report Longtown Podcast with your boy Ike Jones.
What's up, War Report family? You got Ike Jones back in here talking a little Auburn basketball. It is Auburn. It is Georgia going down inside of Stegeman Coliseum. And Georgia right now is trying to figure out how to get things going again after this Tennessee game. It's a team that is proving to be difficult out here in SEC play, though, particularly in their own building. And Auburn still trying to figure out what their identity is going to look like without Janai Broome. They got the win versus Mississippi State in the most recent game, but they've got to figure out how to keep it going versus the next set of Bulldogs here in conference play, this time on the road. It's going to be an interesting game. I feel like every time I come on here right now, once we've gotten into SEC play, really all season, when you talk about the physicality of what the Power Four contests have been for Auburn, I talk about how physical Auburn's going to need to be in order to get the victory. And that is definitely no different in this Georgia team. If you're in here watching this video right now, make sure you go ahead and give your guy a little share so somebody else can get out here and talk about this conversation, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But this is the Lobtown, powered by the War Report on the Auburn Express. Auburn versus Georgia going down at noon. Early tip-off again on a Saturday for Auburn. And last time on the road, early tip-off, it came out a little sluggish, right? Like they were losing in the first half of that game versus South Carolina. So Auburn's got to figure out a way to get rid of these early morning road woes where they're not coming out fresh, sharp, ready to go early. And this team of Georgia, they're going to want to come in and try to muddy this game up. The biggest thing, and again, I feel like I say this over and over and over again, there's just so many teams early in the teams that are early on Auburn's schedule in particular this year are teams that have done a phenomenal job of being able to get to the free throw line, draw fouls. Now, the difference in this one, I'm not going to talk about a team that is functioning to turn you over a bunch. Now, Georgia can get turnovers, but they're not a team that's not really what their calling card is. They're physical and they're free throws. Physical and free throws is the big thing for Georgia, similar to how it was with South Carolina. Their bigs are going to get to the line. They're going to dive and they're going to try to get to offensive boards and that sort of thing. Auburn has to be stout on the interior. So we got to start the conversation with Dylan Cardwell. Dylan Cardwell played a good game versus Mississippi State in this last one. He stayed out of foul trouble for the most part in that game. Chaney Johnson was the guy that really was getting into foul trouble in that game. But Dylan Cardwell did a good job. Now, at the end of the game, he came up with a little bit of a cramp situation. So hopefully that was just need to get better hydrated going into the game. I don't know what the deal is, but don't need him to be getting into that kind of situation, particularly when you're shorthanded on the interior against a guy like Asa Newell, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. But Dylan Cardwell is really where this starts for Auburn versus Asa Newell. Asa Newell, a 6'11" guy. Dylan Cardwell is the best matchup for him. As physical a guy as Chaney Johnson is, he's just giving up way too much size. And that is going to be the big thing for Auburn. How many minutes can Dylan Cardwell play effectively versus Asa Newell? Right now, Newell is averaging 27.6 minutes per game, right? So he will likely play 28 to 30 minutes if he's not in foul trouble for Georgia in this game. So Cardwell's going to need to give you a good amount of minutes. Right now on the season, let me make sure I get this correct for Mr. Dylan Cardwell. He is averaging 19.6, right? So him playing 25 plus minutes is something I think Auburn's going to need from him in order to be able to do what they have to do versus Asa Newell. Now, Auburn did a really good job in this last game of being able to stop Cam Matthews, who is more of a power forward. They had more bodies to throw at him that were comparable in size, but they struggled against the bigger guys in Georgia's lineup of keeping them away from the glass and out of the post stuff. Dylan Cardwell, to me, is the key to this game for Auburn. How well and how effective can he be in how many minutes? He's going to need to be able to put up a good amount of minutes and be effective. He doesn't have to score a lot of points, but he is definitely going to need to be someone who can stay on the floor for a long time in this game in order for Auburn to be successful in long stretches against the best scorer for that other team. Now, the other portions of this for Auburn are going to be about Chaney Johnson and Chad Baker-Mazara again being able to play well. And all right, so if Dylan Cardwell can't, or even if he is, you got to figure out how to score points. This Georgia team is not putting up a ton of points per game this season. In fact, let's take a look at that. Right now, they are averaging 78.5 points per game, right? They're not a team that's going to outscore you per se. They want to keep the score low, keep it close, and be able to utilize the free throw line to do what they need to do to score points. They're not a super efficient offense. They don't shoot the three ball particularly well, low 30% 3-point shooting team. This game for them is going to be about getting to the free throw line consistently and making it muddy for Auburn to be able to figure out how to get looks and how to get points and second chance opportunities. That's how Georgia is going to function in this game. Now, they do a good job defensively of making it tough for you to get into your action. They did a really good job first half versus Tennessee in that game. But the issue in the second half is Tennessee came out and they made shots. So your shot makers for your team, right? Your Chad Bakers, your Miles Kellys, your Tahad Pettifords, your Chaney Johnsons, they need to be able to go out there and make shots and make it to where Georgia needs to score points. If you can be efficient offensively through the physicality that Georgia is going to present, particularly as you try to get into the lane, then you can beat this Georgia team. If Auburn is shooting the three ball well, which they've done both at home and on the road, it's going to be a difficult game for Georgia to keep pace with because Georgia doesn't shoot the three particularly well. And Georgia's going to get into a slower offensive set. And Georgia's going to want to go to the free throw line 1 point at a time and try to get their points in that way. If Auburn can get out and make it a track meet of a game, this is a game I think where even though you don't have Janai Broome, it may be a blessing in disguise for the way that you want to play offense. You want to get out and you want to run and you want to make it difficult for Georgia to keep pace with what you're doing out there. Auburn may need to turn into a pace team in this game to really tire Georgia out. Georgia is not a team that, again, is built to be able to do that sort of thing. In fact, I mean, they play 1, 2, 3 guys, 4 guys, 5, 6 guys, 20 plus minutes, really over 20 minutes for 6 guys. And then they go to the bench for another 2 guys, really. So, right. So that's a 7-man rotation. So rotationally, they're about where Auburn is. They have an 8th that they put in there just because they kind of need to be able to supplement every now and then. So they're not going to kill you with depth. What they are going to do is challenge your depth by getting guys in getting guys in foul trouble so that you have to figure out how to manufacture lineups that you're not typically running in. And then because they have the size on the interior, if they get your interior post guys in trouble, then they're going to be able to dominate on the boards and really get those second chance opportunities and muddy this game up. They're a team that gets to the free throw line a lot. In fact, in the first SEC home games, they shot above 30 free throws in both of those games. And that's really how they're going to be want to play against Auburn. They're going to want to get to the free throw line a bunch. Auburn needs to figure out how to limit their free throw opportunities to somewhere in the 20s, I think, to make this a competitive game and not a sloppy stoppage of play thing over and over again. Georgia wants to muddy it up. Auburn needs to speed it up, in my opinion, in order to be able to take advantage of the fact that they have the quicker guys. And I expect Auburn to play a little bit of zone in this game to try to force Georgia into shooting some distant shots that they're not as comfortable taking. Asa Newell can step out and shoot, and this is a good time to talk about Asa Newell as a player. He is a true freshman, but he's out there doing his thing this season. And this is going to be a game which they're going to need every bit of him to play well. I would have loved to see the left-handed interior battle of Asa Newell versus Janai Broome. We get robbed of that opportunity, but right now Asa Newell 15.3 points per game, 6.6 rebounds per game, and shooting 57.8% from the field. 72% free throw shooter as well. He's just south of 30% from the 3-point line, but he is a guy who can step out and shoot the three. A very comparable match to what Janai Broome brings you. A little bit leaner than Janai, not really same kind of player, but definitely brings physicality on the interior and the left-handed player. I think it would have been an interesting matchup. But anyway, Asa Newell's a guy that Auburn's going to have to function or figure out how to stop. I do expect to see quite a bit of zone in this game against Georgia to try to force them away from the paint. But then it's going to be imperative on Auburn, all 5 guys getting to the defensive glass to make sure that you end the possession with a defensive rebound if it's not going to be a steal or some sort of shot clock violation. So that's going to be, I think, the key thing for Auburn. Get out there and run in transition, and then against Georgia defensively, you're going to want to probably play quite a bit of zone. They'll mix in the zone a little bit to force Georgia to figure out how to make shots from the outside. So I'm looking for the consistency for the Auburn guys, because that's really the difference, right? Chaney Johnson, Chad Baker-Mazar. Chad's been good all year. Chaney's been good for the vast majority of the year. But can you stack games where you do what you did versus your previous opponent? And if you can do that, then you make that transition from being a good quality piece to a guy that's great and reliable for your team. I'm looking to see 2 games in a row, particularly one on the road, where these guys step up in the absence of Janai Broome. But I want to hear from you all right down there in the comment section. What do you want to see from this game? What do you expect to see from this game? Auburn versus Georgia. Score predictions, all of that. Drop that right down there in the comment section. Before you get out of here, give me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share the content with somebody, and we'll be back at you during the game with more analysis and breakdown tomorrow. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.